The frequency of arrests of high-ranking officials has increased significantly in Russia, on average at least one case per week. According to ChTD, since the beginning, at least 28 government officials at the level of ministers, vice-governors, and their deputies have been under investigation. The reasons are almost always the same: bribes, fraud, embezzlement, and abuse of office. Another high-profile incident occurred today, July the 24th. Former Tambov region governor Maxim Egorov, who left his post in November last year, was detained. He is suspected of bribery. On the same day, 3 Chelyabinsk officials were arrested at once: Minister of Property Management Eldar Belousov, Manager of the Governors and Regional Government Affairs Roman Menzhinsky, and former Vice-Governor Alexander Bogashov. All 3 are charged under Part 3 of Article 286 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation, abuse of office committed by a group of persons out of selfish interest and with grave consequences. They face up to 10 years in prison. Earlier in April, former Kursk region governor Alexei Smirnov and his former deputy Alexei Dedov were at the center of a high-profile criminal case. Both resigned in December 2024 and were arrested a few months later on suspicion of fraud related to the construction of defensive fortifications. Their testimony also mentioned the former governor, former Minister of Transport Roman Starovoyt. On July the 7th, Vladimir Putin removed Starovoyt from his post as minister, after which he died by suicide. On July the 20th, investigative bodies sent the former head of the capital construction department of the Belgorod region, Alexei Soshnikov, to pre-trial detention, as well as his subordinates Larissa Streletskaya and Andrei Reshetko. They are suspected of especially large-scale embezzlement of budget funds allocated for the construction of fortifications on the border with Ukraine. A little earlier, the vice-governor of the Belgorod region, Rustem Zainulin, was arrested in a similar case, as well as businessmen close to him, Ivan Novikov and Konstantin Zimin. According to investigators, all of them were involved in large-scale thefts during the construction of the defense line. On July the 24th, it became known that Nikolai Simonenko, vice-governor of the Bryansk region, had been detained. The Menzhinsky court of Moscow ruled to remand him in custody until September the 21st. He became a defendant in a case of abuse of power during the construction of fortifications in the region.
As he departed the White House for Scotland Friday morning, President Donald Trump told reporters that a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas is unlikely as Hamas loses leverage in talks. With relatively few hostages left, Trump said, Hamas doesn't have any bargaining chips left to negotiate. Hamas didn't want to make a deal, Trump said. Asked about next steps, he said, I think what's going to happen is they're going to be hunted down. According to Associated Press, Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff said Thursday the U.S. was cutting short Gaza ceasefire talks after Hamas' response showed a lack of desire to reach a truce.
Yeah, Gaza, they pulled out of Gaza. They pulled out in terms of negotiating. It was too bad. Hamas didn't really want to make a deal. I think they want to die. And it's very, very bad. And it got to be to a point where you're going to have to finish the job. They really, they asked for things. Don't forget, we got a lot of hostages out. So now we're down to the final hostages. And they know what happens after you get the final hostages. And basically because of that, they really didn't want to make a deal. I saw that. So they pulled out, and they're going to have to fight, and they're going to have to clean it up. You're going to have to get rid of it.
What's your comment on ceasefire? Have you given up on a Gaza ceasefire?
Well, the Gaza situation, and I said this was going to happen when you get down to your last 10 or 20. We got a lot of hostages out. We took them out in numbers that nobody believed, a lot of them. And I said, when you get down to 10 or 20, I don't think Hamas is going to make a deal because that means they have no protection. And basically that's what happened. Hamas didn't want to make a deal.
Have you seen that photo?
I think what's going to happen is they're going to be hunted down.
Have you seen that
secondary sanctions sooner?
Sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
Mr. President, did you speak to Netanyahu about allowing aid drops in Gaza from Arab countries?
Yeah, I speak to him, but I can't tell you what I spoke to him about. But it was sort of disappointing, although I told you. I mean, I told you, when you get down to those last 20 hostages, you get down to that last 10 or 20, it's going to be very hard for Hamas to make a deal because they lose their shield, they lose their cover. We got a lot of them out, a lot of them. We took a lot of bodies out, too. You know, so many of the parents said, please get my son's body back. And we're able to do that. We got a lot of people out, live and people that are not alive. But it was very important to the parents to get their son back, even though they knew their son was dead.
Are you going to be able to get... allowing enough humanitarian aid into Gaza? Do you think Israel is allowing enough humanitarian aid?
They're being blocked by a lot of people. People don't know this, and we didn't certainly get any acknowledgement or thank you, but we contributed $60 million to food and supplies and everything else. We hope the money gets there because, you know, that money gets taken, the food gets taken. We're going to do more, but we gave a lot of money. We gave a majority of the money, and the sad part is that no other country other than us gives anything.
After Washington announced the resumption of arms supplies to Ukraine, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Alexander Syrsky, in an interview with the Washington Post, called on Donald Trump to transfer long-range ballistic missiles to Kiev and allow them to be used against targets in Russia. The general stressed the need to supply long-range missiles, American ATACMS and German Taurus. The main condition in the absence of restrictions on the use of these weapons on Russian territory. Such missiles, Syrsky said, will slow down the production of missiles and drones in Russia itself by striking the corresponding factories. They attack almost everything: airfields, populated areas, infrastructure facilities. So, of course, we need supplies of ballistic missiles to be able to give the enemy a worthy rebuff. Syrsky said in an interview with the Washington Post, "The presence of any missile weapons is in itself a deterrent. I hope that thanks to the position of President Trump, this process will be much simpler and we will not have the difficulties that we had before," he added. He declined to answer whether there were any ATACMS missiles left in Ukraine. When asked whether a new batch of American missiles would save Ukrainian lives, he replied, "Of course." Syrsky also noted that the Ukrainian armed forces are experiencing an acute shortage of 155mm artillery shells and need additional armored vehicles. According to him, Ukraine has motivated soldiers, but they need reliable means of protection. Last week, Trump announced an aid plan in which European allies would supply Ukraine with equipment from their own stockpiles and then replenish the arsenal by buying from the United States. It was a sharp about-face for a politician who had previously criticized military aid to Kiev. The Washington Post also recalled that in a phone call on July the 4th, Trump allegedly asked Volodymyr Zelenski whether Ukraine was capable of striking Moscow or St. Petersburg. He later publicly stated that he did not support such strikes. But the very fact of the discussion became a signal. Whether changes in U.S. policy on restrictions on the use of American weapons are possible, the Ukrainian general apparently expects that a possible Trump victory will lead to the lifting of previous restrictions and give Kyiv long-awaited freedom of action. In this case, Ukraine will be able not only to defend itself, but also to actively strike at Russia's military infrastructure, which, according to Syrsky, will change the course of the war.